Start streaming. Yep, we're live.
We are.
How's it going?
It just told me we're live, and so I'm going there, and we're live.
Nice.
How are you, bro?
Yeah, good. We just had a little catch up before. This feels weird to say hello a second time, but I'm good. You know what's funny is like figuring out how to start a podcast
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
is pretty funny. And it's interesting to know how to transition from just like talking, having a conversation into like being into having something being recorded. There's like a feeling that goes along with that.
There's also a feeling that let's stop and start over and do it the right way.
Yeah.
But we're just going. We were talking for about 10, 15 minutes, troubleshooting some audio and and not much really.
Is there anything that you want to focus on today? Because last time I think, if I remember correctly, we did kind of like a quick summary of what we wanted to discuss, or
We
kind of the
did.
purpose of what we were.
Right, and we talked about open dialogue and the guidelines for a proper conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could go there, because I'm very interested to dive deeper on that concept.
Yeah,
That
that's
there's some principles that can be set and they work, right?
totally. And I bet people have talked about this and written about this. And if we researched it, we could probably find some stuff. But what would probably be the most rewarding, at least for us, is to, and we kind of started doing this already in the last time, is to start building a list of things that we find that is the most, I don't know, immediately important in our minds, and then see if we can go from there. Um, and we can always do some research in the future, but I think we had a good start last time. Another thing I'd like to touch on is, um, should we talk about subjects, like random, like just stuff that we're interested in, stuff that might come up, like categorize things that we've talked about before in sort of like a, yeah, in like a list. Do you think do you think in the
Yeah.
future we should make like a document that has all of these things in it, like the basis around the important parts of what makes a conversation really flow, and touch on all the things that we find important and rewarding in conversations, as well as a list of all the things that we're interested in, and would like to use in our quest to
Yeah, 100%. It's like we could have a little bit of homework that we do on our own and make some research, but then these conversations are also another kind of research,
hmm
right?
yeah.
Like we're picking each other's brains and testing each other's ideas, bro, right?
this thing this thing's really loud. Yeah, I think that that's probably the place where we will uncover the most.
What's really loud?
Sorry, no, just this thing. I heard it squeak, and I couldn't
Oh,
I couldn't
okay.
I
I
couldn't
didn't. It's good. Maybe we
uh
should ask. I'm just kidding. Dude, because another approach would be to just be like, hey, so what's up, right?
mhm
And then go wherever we want to go
mhm
at that moment.
mhm
But maybe some other times we want to plan ahead for a specific subject, right?
mhm Yeah.
which we didn't right now. So maybe this is just a free flow, see where we land.
Yeah. Well, I think the I have kind of like an abstract idea about the process that we're taking to developing whatever spoken openness or the process that we'd like to make a habit, whatever we're calling that and whatever it becomes. I have a general vague notion that the first, I don't even know how many it would be, but the first times that we record and we Skype and we do all this is really like fumbling the ball and trying to figure out exactly where we're running with the ball, and you know exactly how we're gonna make it work. And I think that um, we need to leave open the opportunity for planning ahead and choosing something that we really want to talk about, and then also having the freedom to discuss what's ever on your mind or whatever's going on. And so even those two things would be a part of that list that we were talking about earlier. I think like both of those things, having the room to discuss things that were planned ahead and to bring things up as they happen, those both could be things that are on the list of kind of frameworks for these
Yeah.
conversations.
But do you think it would be wiser to focus right now on what spoken openness is, or
I think so.
whatever we're gonna name this thing, and maybe work on specifying it
Yeah, that's
to
the
the
thing.
point where it's a thing, and then we'll have this dialogues over specific subjects. But
Yeah, I think
I think, yeah,
the least we can do to pigeonhole it into anything is probably best.
right.
So I think what will make what we're doing right now cool is and most beneficial to the the cause or the process or whatever. I don't even know the correct word what that would be, but is to bounce ideas back and forth, but not necessarily make anything too structured so that we limit ourselves in the future. So, um, hey Nathan, how's it going?
Nathan just said hello.
So, just as a quick, we are in the process of developing a platform and a habit of having conversations and opening it up to people who are interested in improving formulating sentences, getting things out of their head, saying things, and exploring conversations basically with complete freedom and in a like catalyzing environment for maximizing your ability to do that. So
Love it.
this is the second time we've had a conversation about it. We decided to record, and that's what we're up to right now is designing this thing.
Yeah,
Cool.
and we don't have an exact idea of where this is going, but I wanna say this. So in the back, I think we've both done things where we're like, I may upload this to the internet or put it out there, but there's no really a difference if someone sees it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I made this for myself, uh, primarily.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I think we have to say that we do want people to join and listen and want to become a part of this. And I think for that to happen, we need to specify what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe we can start talking about awareness or
Mm-hmm.
whatever right now.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe people will join in and be interested in that topic. But if we clarify the priority, which is the conversation, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to say it though. It's not about the topic right now. I think it's more about the type of conversations that we want to have.
Right. And one of the things that we need to do is figure out exactly how to incorporate comments and in the chat. So
Hmm.
Nathan, wrote what he's been thinking about these days, and that's stuff that we can touch on. This is an open forum. Yeah, it's an open forum. I think what we're trying to figure out right now is naming and figuring out the correct language to creating the most open and specific platform to have specific conversations, because
Yeah.
I, as well as many other people, have seen things become people take sides. It becomes tribal. People get worried about saying something. People have fear of speaking openly. That's one of the reasons why the current name is Spoken Openness. We want things to feel completely freeing, and the main point is to improve your ability to formulate. In my mind, one of the reasons that these conversations between that Farid and I have been having are one of the reasons for having those is because it's benefited my ability to formulate sentences. That's been something that I've always needed to improve upon. I'm much better at expressing myself in writing, and we want to have a platform that allows people to do this and practice this while having interesting conversations and getting into stuff and exploring ideas. So
Totally.
so would you say that our priority of these early talks are to putting names to what we want the conversations to be and defining that?
Right, and the principles for an authentically open conversation. It's like maybe the first topic should be, speech or communication or
Mm-hmm.
dialogue itself. We want to talk about the ability to talk, and also the different approaches for conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I
And I
think.
think we touched on a lot of this stuff the last time we talked, and I didn't really
Hmm.
necessarily watch it back or write anything down, but I think we've got a lot of stuff in there that we probably should have.
I agree. Some valuable pieces of info.
Yeah. So, in your mind, the quicker we can get almost a like a post that gives a description of what we're all about and what this is all about.
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
sort of the goal, is to get that started, so that when people see the channel, they can read that and go, "Oh, this is cool. I know exactly what this is. Everyone's welcome. I want to engage." And then whatever we're talking
Yeah.
about, that's basically, we want to get the ball rolling, and we need to
Exactly. Right.
prioritize what will get that to happen. So,
So maybe not in order to do that, we need to go through the exercise of writing down like a brief summary of what we are creating, what we're doing here.
yeah.
And that has a lot of problems by itself, I think, when you start to write down something.
Yeah.
I get some kind of what is it? It's a little bit of fear of confusion or doubt, because if you don't write it down, there's so many possibilities. But
Mhm.
when you need to specify it, then you need to make a decision, because it becomes this thing and not this other thing. And if you don't specify it, all the possibilities are out there, right?
Yeah.
But
And
would
that's
you agree that if it's really specific, it's better?
totally. I think so, but also specific in that everything's been clarified about what it is this is about and what we're looking for, but not specific in that it inhibits potential or
Mm.
possibilities of deviating from that in a positive way. because
Right.
we don't want to make something so strict and so stringent that, I mean, this is one of the things we touched on last time, and this again I'll say it's going to come up constantly for me, is it's getting in the in between, that the best way, the between order and chaos, between, you know, that whole thing of having structure but also having the ability to be open and be free and not feel inhibited by anything. And that is going to be an important thing to consider when you know, defining, because defining can inhibit something.
But maybe we could do definition by elimination or something like that. Like
Yeah,
talking about what is it that we're not doing here, right?
totally.
Um,
That's
maybe that
helpful. What are we
works.
not doing here?
We're not just talking, right?
We're not talking. We're not trying to have arguments.
We're not competing with each other or anyone else in
Mm-mm.
terms of who's got the right
Yeah,
idea or the truth.
we're not claiming to have the answers. We don't want people to be having conversations where one person is claiming to know a truth about something, and because
Yeah.
that's only going to hold back. The trouble is, I think exploring truths and exploring possibilities might require somebody to hold a stance. So
Yeah.
there's like a nuanced difference there. Is, I guess the main part of that is not letting, knowing how to define a situation so that we can be sure that the ego isn't involved and isn't attached to having to be
Yes.
right in the conversation.
It's like the art of defending an argument without being a bully, right? Like
Yeah,
imposing your
identifying.
opinion on the other.
It's like identifying with it. It's like, I mean, so much of everything is biased, and it's not a bias in
Hmm.
like in a it's it might be aware. It might be like someone saying, "Hey, I'm aware that I have this bias." Like, you know, "Hey, I know that I usually think this way." But they still think they're right, even though they're you know what I mean? Even though they're admitting to a bias. This is one thing that I always see is people will say, "You know what? I know I have a bias. Everybody has a bias." They still think they're right after saying that.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's going to happen to us
That is, I
because
we do that
we're
all the
not
time.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I do that
Even
all
if
the time.
it's so difficult to remain conscious through a conversation because it's to be detached from your beliefs. I think that's a very hard thing to do.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
even if you can say it, even if you can uh, teach someone else to do it,
Hmm.
you still have to practice, and you still have to catch yourself sometimes.
Yeah. Here's the thing that's kind of weird is that we both acknowledge that one of the things that makes conversations super beneficial and rewarding and all kinds of stuff is practicing being totally conscious while you are having the conversation and the whole time. The problem is we don't want to make a list of things, of almost like rules, so that someone comes in and is like, "Oh, I gotta, you know, focus on my breath and like totally listen," and then people are like, "Ah, you know what, this it's just it we don't want it to turn into like a weird thing where someone comes to our podcast or conversations and it's like this weird environment where everybody's doing the same thing and like acting weird and like, you know, being overly, I don't, overly observant of themselves or something like that.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
That's a risk. Yeah.
one of the hard things for us is going to be figuring out how to know if something's deviating the the ideal, and then knowing how to interfere with that. Like, if you know, like, I don't want to have a platform where people are just yelling at each other. And
Right, and we also don't want to have an administrator or
no,
a
yeah,
referee.
yeah. So that's why I think defining this stuff is super important, or not define, you know what I mean, like having an
But also,
understanding of what it's
yeah,
about.
But I'm happy that this is our second stream, and Nathan already said that he's been learning about leadership and how companies need to practice empathy. Dude, that's
That's
like
huge. Yeah.
that's great that he's proposing this topic, and I would love to dive into that topic maybe later today, maybe next session. But
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah. And hopefully when people are comfortable and we figured out the technology, then it'll be um, hopefully we'll have a platform where people are able to voice those opinions themselves. I mean, that's
Exactly.
while while I would love to just take info from people and like spark conversation ideas, I think a large part of this vision is developing the ability to open source this because, I mean, we're seeing so much in the media and everywhere how long form conversations are becoming, I mean, unbelievably popular. I mean, people are
Yeah.
desperate for long form conversations where people like get into stuff and it's not talking heads on the TV talking for 30 seconds over each other to try to prove something. And we want to open source this so that everyone is participating in this because the impact that that can have is could be unbelievable. I mean, it could be, I mean, that's the dream, right? That's kind of
Exactly.
the is to get the most people involved in having long form conversations while being mindful of not attaching the ego to it or feeling like completely identified with the ideas that they're using to practice having those conversations with.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. And I also have this idea that if you're joining this type of conversations, you're not only learning from the other opinions, you're learning from yourself, right? Because
Totally, man.
you're diving into your own, what is it? Um, your own programming
Yeah.
or history of info,
Yeah,
right?
I forget who said it, but they said something like I don't know what I think until I say it. Something like that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
I love that.
yeah. And yeah, what's
That
while I
happens
want to be
what,
able to
yeah.
quote people on this show, on this like platform, I
hmm
don't want to feel also forced to always know exactly who we're
Who
referencing
said
and stuff like
something,
that.
right?
If we can,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
just natural. That's what happens in life. So if we can remember something, let's attribute it. If we can't, it's
that's
fine.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But are you? I think I would mention the recent guys I've been listening to, or gals. I think if I were to say someone said this, most of the time it would be a recent
I don't think
phrase
that's
or
true
quote.
though. I don't think that's true. I mean, I always will have things in the back of my mind that come up from reading like Alan Watts or like just a
Right.
random Ram Dass book or like reading, any like anything is gonna pop up. I don't think
True.
it's necessarily always gonna be some recent thing, um, and I think it should be
Excuse
encouraged. Like the trying to point out where ideas came from or why you might be formulating that idea that way. I think that's also important to know the source of what might be influencing your thinking because
Mm-hmm.
that's a big way. What's
Yeah,
funny is
tracing
that
back the
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 lineage.
idea, the core idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what's funny is we were all babies and we had no thoughts and we learned how to have thoughts by learning and replicating things and mirroring people and
Mhm.
like people get so attached to things that they say and it's like you were once a baby and now
Right, like ownership of ideas.
you're so invested in this thing and you will like people will be like I will attack anybody that doesn't say this like this because it's like and it's like
hmm
I just in my head I go you were once a baby And it's like, I think
I
that's
think we
important,
should tell
man.
each other that sometimes. Like, whenever we feel a little bit engaged in some argument, we're like, okay,
Too
hold on, let me
intense.
say something.
Yeah.
Dude, you were once a baby.
Yeah, like you absorbed this certain information diet that makes you think that this is the thing.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's necessarily me saying there's no objective reality or objective right and wrong. Like I'm my ability to 100% decide how I think morality functions is an ongoing and will be a really long process for me. So I think that's one thing is I will make claims, but I almost never fully believe them just because there's so much I have so much doubt when it comes to complete strong statements. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like always, I like this thought that the more you think you can be wrong, the
Mm-hmm.
less you are. And if you just believe that you've got the truth, then
Mm-hmm.
you're probably wrong many times.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a radar for your own bias.
Yeah, a radar.
Radar.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, yeah.
So,
But it's like
yeah.
yeah, that's similar to that whatever that quote was what's like this you're only as smart as what you know that you don't know, whatever that thing is. It's a very similar thing. Like the more you can poke holes in your argument, then the less likely you're going to be, I don't know, completely indoctrinated by the thought, and you're going to be open to exploring other things. I think
Yeah.
a huge part of what would be awesome about this is to make sure that we foster or there is an environment where it's completely open to exploring ideas no matter what your currently assumed beliefs are or what your
Hmm.
what you might 100% be committed to.
And you can also win an argument where you're wrong, where you're actually wrong, but you just won the argument. You
Yeah.
just made the other person believe your own
Yeah.
constructed thing, but that doesn't mean you're right.
No, and that also doesn't achieve anything.
Anything, yeah, exactly.
Like
So
that.
it's not about who's got the strongest or more objective argument.
Mhm.
It's about the flirting of the possible
Potentials, yeah.
arguments. Yeah.
Totally. um
So this is what we're doing then. We're having conversations where it appears we are debating.
Sometimes it could. I don't think it should necessarily that be the. I don't think it should be the goal, though. I get what you're saying, but I don't think it should be like the goal of like it appears like we're debating. I think they're organic conversations about any topic or anything that happens for multiple purposes. One of them is to improve your ability to formulate sentences and to express yourself using language. Um, Is that the
Hmm.
sole purpose?
Is it?
I
I
mean,
mean, there.
exploring
It
ideas
feels
is
like
like a
there's more
byproduct.
than. Yeah. So let's phrase the main thing. Let's try to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, that's
Because we
possible.
already kind of played with what we're not doing, and then
Mm-hmm.
we went into a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried to like close it up. And the thing is that when you try to make it just a thing, like when you try to say this, I'm doing this,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many questions.
And there's so many voices in your head that's like, wait, you're not just doing that. And then you have to be like, okay, well then what am I doing? And that's I guess what we're trying to figure out right now is what I mean, one thing that I just realized we never really thought about was what's the technology that we're going to use to allow people to join and to moderate
Yeah.
participation in the in
Mm.
chat and in video as well.
That's really interesting, and I think that technology is evolving a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The latest FaceTime update, I think it allows for like 30, around 30 people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm thinking something like that, not
Yeah.
specifically FaceTime, of course, but
Some platform that allows people to like just put in like a username and then join in that's separate to our stream links. And it's almost like if someone in the chat is like like I've got energy and I'm like ready to go, then first come first serve. We're talking and then we can bring that person in. They've got an opportunity. We just, maybe I don't even know. We should figure out if there's any like saying hi or whatever. It could even just be jumping right into the conversation because I don't think it should be a spotlight on anybody. It should just be an ability for them to go right into doing what we want to be doing.
it should be, though I could I I would bet that some people are gonna not have very good manners and interrupt other people and or like ch try to change the topic drastically.
Yeah.
So we're probably gonna have to come up with some guidelines. So like
Yeah.
for like mutual general respect guidelines or something like that.
What if like the initial phase was someone's like, "Hey, I'm ready to go." We pull them into the stream and we have a three-way dialogue with them as they, are airing their ideas, talking, communicating. And then um, down the line, if someone else is like, "Hey, I'm ready to go. I'm interested in this thing, same as that person," then we allow that person to jump on and then we allow them to, communicate. Maybe we pause our video or, I don't know. But first first method could be just allowing people to come on, start, you know, just get the ball rolling, just start communicating.
Maybe we'll set topics for some conversations so that we're focused on a specific topic. And if
Here's
you
the
don't want
thing.
to talk about that topic, maybe you wait for another
Yeah.
sesh.
Here's the thing though, if we set a topic, I mean in the future, if there's enough people involved, that could be great. My only worry is that depending on there's not that many topic these days, especially these days that aren't heated. And I can see that if we say like our topic is this, then someone is going to be like, "Oh, I can't wait for that topic because I'm going to come in and just, say what I want to say about this thing." And then other people are going to be like, "Oh, I can't wait to just." And it's not about that. It's not about like saying stuff that you already have thought about a lot or already formulated a lot of thoughts
Right.
about. It should
That's,
be about the practice. So if, you know,
yeah.
and I don't mean to say that like I think that that's an awesome idea to have times that we define the topic. We talked about it earlier. My only worry is that at least with limited people and the potential for people to already just like wait until they already have formulated thoughts on things to jump into the convo, you know.
Yeah, it definitely has pros and cons, but I agree with you saying that the primordial thing is the open conversation. And
Yeah.
Nathan said open forum. I think I like that because
Mhm.
that means an open conversation could just be two people, right?
Mhm.
But if it's a forum, is it implicit that anyone can join?
Mhm. I think that's maybe like a connotation, but not necessarily. Um, maybe, yeah, yeah.
Right. So if we would have to, I'm putting the ball on you now. If you mm, had to define it, would you take it? Would you try? Just Just put something out there.
it is
We'll go from
a
there. My light is turning on and off. Should probably just turn it off and
okay.
not have it.
It is. I want to say place because it's like a place you can go, even though it's virtual. It's like a place you can go to have long
Platform.
form, open conversations uh, without fear of judgment or. Um,
Okay.
it's like what something. There's two ways to define it. There's one way to define it, which is kind of like the fun, like the cool, not the cool, but like a conscious paradigm where everyone is open and aware as they back and forth consciously. There's another way to define it, which is like, hey, listen, you can't. There's no place for people to have conversations like this or to talk like this. I mean, I'm sure lots of people have friendships and certain relationships where they can have some kind of version of this, but then that's limited to that person or to that time, or maybe it's just after whatever situation, like hey, after swimming or sitting on the beach, people tend to be more relaxed and have conversations. We want to create a place that's always there, that's letting people do this and participating in that way, because I think that it's like the regular world right now is void of opportunities like this. You know?
I just thought of open conversation facilitator,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Because I
I thought
like
you were
what you
gonna say
said.
facility. Which
Oh, could be. Headquarters.
headquarters, yeah.
Open, what does open mean? Because that may be not the right word I'm thinking right now. Because openness sounds right,
Mm-hmm.
but an open conversation may mean another thing.
Yeah, so it's the first definition is allowing access, passage, or a view through an empty space not closed or blocked up. Um,
I like that.
there's loosely knitted or woven. There is ready to take calls.
Okay, so what do you think of,
Frank and communicative, not given to deception or concealment.
yeah, everything sounds right. So we should, there's a couple of elements. There's a conversation element, there's a multi people, how would you say that?
Mm, there's a
That
group
it
element. Yeah.
involves, there's a group
Multiple
element.
people. There's a, yeah.
So multiple people, open conversation facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, are you thinking that people would join to have conversations even if we're not part of them?
I
Is
mean,
that,
I hope so.
yeah, me too, totally.
Yeah. The trouble is where, I mean,
But if we're doing that, then we're building a platform. We're kind of building an app, right?
I don't
To
think it could be
host
an,
the technology
I don't think it could be an
and
app. We could just, hope that people do this on their own, like they can have their own stream, or what would be wild is well, I just thought of one idea and then I like countered it with another idea in my head. One
mm,
idea was to like start a now that we give everyone the info so they can log in and start a stream, and you know
but people
and then
would just
another
maybe
option is that we yeah,
change
but
the password.
dude, that, and then we got to deal with that, and then we got to be like, hey, someone Like we don't want this, you know, until there's a problem, we just see if it works. Like if we're clear about the vibe of the place and like, you know, expectations, I mean, we could attempt to trust. We could attempt it. And if like we
Sure.
wake up one morning and it's just like naked pics and like weird writing and like, you know, some, then we're like, okay, this doesn't work because people are just someone is gonna want to mess with it.
What if someone just deletes all of the history or something? I mean, there's so many things that
See,
the
maybe
the
there's,
wrong people
yeah,
with the administrator access could do.
right. The thing is, like, say it was just a YouNow account, then there's no stored videos. There's no, uh,
Yeah. Okay, are we getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here?
maybe the thing is, I don't think we should try to figure out how to make a like an app platform. That's so.
Yeah,
I think the point of
that's
this is like open source. Like you should do this if we can facilitate a place that is separate to our stream that people can do it. We should figure that out in the future, but that's not a priority. Is that?
no, it's not. I think the priority is to have more conversations between ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and slowly figure out how to incorporate other people
Mm-hmm.
in an audiovisual way. Meanwhile, it's comments for them, I think.
And participation, hopefully soon being able to like call in and not call in but like, you know what I mean, participate. um,
Yeah.
do you think it would be a good idea, say if we had a YouTube channel that was set up and we had a like the video that always plays on the channel is like the intro video, and in that maybe we should create something that is like our main message about what it is, what it's about,
Mm.
what our aims are, and then underneath that is, you know, just recordings of the streams that also went up on YouNow, that also went up
Yeah.
on Periscope, that also went up in other places, and we should also design the text that goes up in the description of all those other places because they're not going to have the video. So maybe we can
Yeah.
say, check out our intro video so you know what this is all about, and then a short description afterwards, and that's a link they can go see that YouTube video,
Hmm.
um, because unless people see that, and you know, then they're, you know, they'll just be like, oh, these guys are talking about artificial intelligence,
Exactly.
and they
Yeah.
don't know why or what it's all about.
Yeah. So should we start by trying to come up with a final draft of this short description?
Mm-hmm.
Should we start with the text with the dude, I like how, for example, Patreon,
Mm-hmm.
it makes you define what you're creating.
Yeah.
It starts with mm, spoken openness is creating,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to fill that in.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the more specific, the more it works, I think. The
Should
clearer the message, the better. Which is, dude, that's in general so hard for me. I need to say that because
So, what if we just called it a podcast?
that's what I'm saying. That's what I want to do because that leaves open every podcast possibility,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I mean, and
But I
that's
think that's a
technically
bad
what it
idea.
is, because we'll have.
But the part of me thinks that's a bad idea because we should have more clarity. There's so many podcasts and people just don't want to watch a podcast, and we don't want to make
Yeah,
just
but we
any
could say
podcast, right?
like developing a podcast that is dedicated to practicing open conversations,
Exactly. Hmm.
uh,
I like
well, that
practicing.
also allows for that that encourages participation on the part of the viewer and the in the chat and the audience. We hope to grow to help facilitate these conversations in a more public manner in the future.
Around that, yeah. Which is already pretty specific. And it's a bigger difference than just saying this is a podcast.
Yeah, but that's what I meant is like podcast versus platform versus place versus
okay. It is podcast
forum
over
versus
a platform. Forum, yes.
Yeah.
So we're agreeing on that.
It's a multi-platform podcast.
Nice.
It's a multi-platform podcast.
Nice.
That is dedicated to
practice.
It is a multi-platform podcast. We could say our names, created by these two people who are dedicated to having long-form, open conversations that hope that...
I would end there.
No, because I need to put in that encourages audience participation.
Then that's okay. It's a multi-platform podcast dedicated to practicing open conversations and encouraging
audience participation. The only problem is, does audience participation just sound like we want people to, like, you know, I don't know. We want... It
could mean different things.
So it is a multi-platform podcast.
Wait,
that wants
I think all podcasts are multi-platform now.
Right, so it is a podcast.
Yeah.
That is dedicated to having and also open sourcing long-form conscious conversations and encourages audience participation. I don't know.
It's good, bro. I think that we could find a different way to say that we're encouraging audience participation, because they wouldn't be audience anymore, I think.
We could say just the open sourcing, I guess, is a good thing to say. Did you write anything down, or?
I'm not writing anything down. I don't want to make the noise, and I feel the necessity because that's the way my mind works. But we're having a convo here.
Should I write using analog technology?
Dude, I have analog technology right here, but I think that would distract me from...
Well, I think we should just write down our first draft.
Okay, which is a podcast.
And then I should probably take a break here.
Yeah, bro. We're starting with it's a podcast, which is the most obvious thing. And then...
I also think that we both acknowledge that these first podcasts are not going to be exciting to listen to. They're documenting the process. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if anyone's interested in the process of conceptualizing and defining what this is, but we're trying to get to where we're having specific conversations on real topics.
I almost wonder if we should make like a Google Doc after this and just back and forth making that sentence. I like the start, but I think we might be able to do it a little bit better in that format.
So what do we have right now? We have a podcast.
Stopped for a second. It's a podcast that practices and aims to open source long form conversations. um, with a focus on improving, with a focus on improving verbal fluency.
I think that's just a
It's a given.
it's yeah, that's like
But I don't know.
isn't that
That's a large part of it, and that's a large part of why I think it would be great for it to be for people to do the same thing. That's for me. That's like the main point is to practice having long form conversations because they almost don't exist in regular day to day life for people.
but it isn't I agree. Isn't verbal fluency just a variable in the whole thing? I don't have
Maybe,
that
maybe. I think we don't.
much fluency because English is not my native language. But I think that doesn't take away my ability to have proper open conversation and be
No, 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 no. But I think it's. I don't mean like a focus on it as in like that's what we. That's what you should expect if you tune in. I mean like that's what we're practicing. That
we're practicing.
we're trying to improve that.
Right. We're also trying to improve. Maybe it's the same thing, but we're trying to improve word choices
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and our ability to communicate the right thing and not the what's close to the right thing. I think a lot about that. Focusing on what I want to say, not something around what I need to say, and to make the mental exercise to find the exact words that would
Mm-hmm.
that would communicate what I'm thinking more accurately.
Mm-hmm. Uh,
Dude, isn't open source
Hold
have to
on.
do with software and code and
No, I think open source is just a way to say that we hope everyone does the same thing. I think that's
okay.
I've seen open source used in many different. I think I've got a definition. Verbal fluency is a cognitive function that facilitates information retrieval from memory. Successful retrieval requires executive control over cognitive processes such as selective attention, selective inhibition, mental set shifting. This is very technical. And
Hmm.
internal response generation and self monitoring. Tests of verbal fluency evaluate an individual's ability to retrieve specific information within restricted search parameters. Um, so one of the things is like you ask someone to generate words beginning with a single letter, but common, so that they are generating words.
That sounds like you could have a lot of verbal fluency, like be high on verbal fluency skill, but not play around with different ideas and not have the openness to
Right,
like
right.
word and if like imagination
Yeah,
and attack certain
right. So it's like
more out there concepts.
totally. So we'd have like a list. It would be like concept exploration, verbal fluency,
Mm.
uh,
Listening, bro, right?
listening.
Big part of it.
What'd you say? Sorry.
Listening,
That's
it's a big part of
that
it.
was a listening joke.
Nice. I was too slow on picking that up.
um, Yo, should we pause?
It's been an hour and 15.
Yeah, I'm feeling that lack of caffeine today,
Yeah.
affecting my motivation.
Let's round up the draft that we're finishing with. Would you like that? And
I got.
what do you have?
Let's
Let's
pick
put
that
it.
up next time.
Just tell me what you wrote.
I didn't write. I stopped.
You wrote.
I
Okay.
stopped.
Okay.
I don't think I have the energy to produce it yet. I think I'm gonna need to conserve, and then next time we'll attack it with what we've talked about today.
Still, I think we're pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Out of just not having a very clear idea,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's three elements that go together, and maybe we'll word them
Mm-hmm.
differently, more accurately, but it's podcast, it's open source, it's conversation, exploration of conversation,
Yeah.
somewhere around those lines. There's a group element, there's
Mm-hmm.
long form element.
Mm-hmm.
And this was an improvised day. We have to say that. This was not a
Oh
perfectly
man.
aligned day for both of
No.
us.
No.
So maybe we'll have some 2.5 hour days, but right now we're hitting
Well, I think it's. I
the
mean, it's a practice, right? And like, so I think that's the whole point is that we make it a practice and we're doing it. So yeah,
Also, I think we're very good at identifying where when we should probably finish it,
that's true.
and I think most of the time, both of our energy is rounding up around at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, just yeah, thank you, and we'll pick this up on the next one.
And thanks to everyone who joined.